This wasn't just another test match. This was an emotional rematch after the 2023 Rugby World Cup. The singing, the criticism, the pain. And the Springboks came to Dublin with one mission in mind, and that was to dominate and to destroy. And today I'll be breaking down on exactly what happened. But most importantly, I'll be sharing key lessons which young rugby players and aspiring coaches can learn from this game. Hi guys, welcome to another episode on the Coach G Show. And I just want to say thanks to every single one of you that have been supporting me on this new journey and helping me to get the new show on the road. And lots happening behind the scenes at the moment. We're getting new guests involved and really focused on making this a real quality show. And I'm super pumped. But anyway, enough about that. Hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody has settled down after that Springbok Island game. What an impressive game that was. And maybe to give the audience some context, there was a lot of emotion in that game. You could see it, in terms of the intensity of the players, in terms of what they were bringing, and also in terms of, those collisions, the contact. It was brutal. That wasn't a rugby game. That was war. That was something different. That is a game to remember for the ages. And it takes me back when I was a youngster, a young rugby player, watching South Africa play the All Blacks and those epic test matches. It was intense. It was hard. That game was just different. That was more than just rugby. But I think it goes back where the tension was created. The tension was created. We all know the story. It was created after that World Cup game where South Africa lost against Ireland, and we had the Irish fans singing Zombie in Your Head. That one cut deep. That one cut deep. And we all saw how that transformed later as the World Cup went on, and it evolved into Russia's in Your Head. And once again, just shows the passion of South African supporters. And that was brilliant to see that. But there was a lot of emotion in this game, and even the hype and the build up to the game. And I had a laugh at the stage sometimes with the Irish media. Sometimes, what they are saying, it's just, I don't know where they get them. But anyway, I don't want to get involved in that war. But I think which is very important for all fans that they need to know is that this podcast is about education. This podcast is about, sharing my take on the game, the lessons, the insights. And that is what I'm trying to do with this podcast episode. So I think the first thing I want to touch base on is the defense of the Springboks. It's intense. Yes, we see there's a massive press from the box, great line speed, they're pressing hard. And I think what is important for people that is still learning the game, and especially young rugby players, you got to trust the system. No matter what defensive system you're using, you got to trust the system. You got to back the system. Because if you are just doing things your own way and going in your own ace, you kill everybody. You kill the whole team. And we also saw at times players were shooting up really hard. But when they were shooting up hard, they were taking responsibility and making sure they were hitting the targets. Because we all know with the Springbok defense, there is a lot of space out wide. But sometimes that space is actual fake space. It's there, but the way the Springbok line is set and the amount of pressure they were putting onto the Irish team, it was unbelievable. But the collisions, the tackle, the clear intent, it was intense. And I'll be honest with respect to the Irish team, they brought it as well. They didn't step off from the physicality. They gave it their best. But the efforts, I think, from Jasper Visser, key jackals at the right time. And even with Thomas Dutoit, in France, we would say Thomas Dutoit, a prop, having that ability to steal in that moment. And I'm going to bounce on that in a bit in terms of the skills of the front row, which is very important. But defense was the key. That aggression, that set the tone. If you can break down a team physically and mentally, half the battle is won. And that wasn't the only weapon. there was the scrum as well. The scrum was also a massive weapon for the Springboks. But what I would like to talk with the next topic is the evolution of the Springbok attack. It's important for a team to evolve. Yes, you need to stick to your strengths. You need to amplify your strengths. That's very important. But you need to leave room for improvement. And I think if we look at that first try of the Springboks, where Damon Willemse scored in the corner, that was impressive. We are known for mauling, scrummaging, very direct running. And of late, I'm loving what I'm seeing. But what we are starting to see, we saw the game against Australia, where the Springboks were playing full on attack. We paid the price. Okay, we went back to our conservative style. But I do believe now the Springboks have found that balance, attacking at the right times, applying the kicking game, because that's what we're good at, that aerial battle, chasing the ball, chasing those scraps. That's exactly what we did. But what was impressive was see what that try, Damon Willemse was seeing. We had the classic route of, I think it was Damon Dalinda hitting up hard after, I think it was a maul. I'm not sure, can't remember. It's a few days now. But then after that running line of Ebenezabeth, which sucked in two defenders, and also having Peter Steph de Toy there in that wide channel. Normally in the past, Peter Steph de Toy would just keep the ball and run hard and trying to dominate his opponent. But we saw his ability with his soft hands to give that pass, and we saw Damien, Willemse going over for that try, which was unbelievable. It's very important to acknowledge the evolution of the Springbok attack, and the skill set of the players have evolved. South African players were not known for the pull-back pass or behind-the-back pass, the extra passes, and we're seeing that more and more. So I do believe that is a key for the Springbok team at the moment. This ability to switch between different styles. When they decide they want to maul, they maul. When they decide they want to dominate their opponent in the scrum, they do exactly that. When they want to attack. But now we have the players for that. But evolution is important in any team. And that's the lesson that I want to share with you. You can't stay in your comfort zone. You can't just stick to what you know. You got to stay ahead of the game. That's why a lot of the things that I share on social media, I share that with the intent to keep myself accountable as a coach and as a human being, because I've got to find different ways of doing things. I'm currently exploring the possibility of how AI can be beneficial to rugby players and coaches. I'm having a bit of fun with that because I'm testing it out myself, using it as an aid. And it's not about doing the work for us as coaches, it's more something to help us process, put a lot of things into place. The next topic I want to talk about in that game is tactical awareness. This is crucial because we've seen with the November test matches that there were a few red cards. And honestly, there's enough YouTube channels and podcasts talking about whether the ref was right, whether it was wrong. We do know there is clear inconsistency when it comes to the execution of these red cards, whether it's a bunker call, whether it's a yellow card, sometimes it's a penalty. Anyway, but tactical awareness is important. This means that players, you need to be conscious of your surroundings. You need to have spatial awareness when you're on attack, but you also need to be aware of what's happening in that moment. But because there was so much emotion involved in this game, we saw that the red brain was active. All right. So you guys all know the concept from the red brain and the blue brain from Kerry Evans, the book Perform Under Pressure. He also helped the Springboks. So the red brain is like all fired up. It's anger. It's pure emotion, not thinking lucidly, not making calculated decisions, just getting stuck in. So we saw that the clear example was with that clear out on Malcolm Marx, which resulted into a red card. Could that have been avoided? Yes. Why did he go in like that? Because he wanted to hurt the guy. Right? It's that simple. But that's why it's important in games like this. You need to maintain your lucidity. You need to remain calm. You need to be calculated. You need to know what you want to do and what you want to achieve in that game. You want to have aggression, you've got to have controlled aggression. Ages ago, I had on the podcast Richie Gray, who is called the Collision King, and I had the a great opportunity to work with him with the Springboks. And he's been consulting all over Europe with French teams, but especially today, he's very present with NFL teams, helping them to level up their contact game. And he mentioned you got to have controlled aggression. You can't just go in there guns blazing, because then we end up losing players. And we also saw that the repetitive disciplinary errors by the Irish team cost them anything. Having, I think it was 3 yellow cards. I haven't seen that in a while. Playing with 12 men, I think, at the stage. If I'm mistaken, please, guys, don't hesitate to correct me. All right. I have no ego. I will get it wrong sometimes. But that played a massive role. One could ask if that 15v15 could have been different, but they had 15v15 for about 30 minutes. So they did stay in the fight. So respect to the Irish team for staying in the fight. So what I'm trying to tell players is you got to be aware of what's happening. And it starts at training. You can do scenario training. When you're tired, you got to make good decisions. Don't, when you're tired in a training session, do stupid mistakes, train bad habits. You need to be conscious of what you are doing, because when those pressure moments arise in the game, you need to make sure that you are capable of controlling your aggression and you're capable of controlling your emotions. That's the last thing we want, losing a player. So tactical awareness is something that you need to train. You can do this through scenario training. You can do this by training under fatigue, working on your decision making. But at the end of the day, we know rugby is a collision sport, it's a contact sport. We want to inflict pain. We want to hurt each other, but you need to do it within the rules. And that's why that is very important. Okay, tackle technique. All right, we saw the efficiency of the Springboks, the execution of the tackle technique. They went a lot of the double hits. They went low most of the time. And that is something that you need to work on. Yes, obviously there were the 2 red cards, the previous 2 games, unfortunately. But in all fairness, it's tall guys. They're over 2 meters long. They did make the effort to drop their height, but I'm not here to dispute the red card issue. But what I want to talk about, tackle technique, is something that you can work on individually. And you don't need to just have full-on tackles, full-on collisions all the time. But with those red cards, we also saw the thing that was lacking at times was the wrap. So this is something that you can work on. You can have a teammate in front of you and you are just tracking him 1v1. You're just following him in. And when you go in for the tackle, you make sure you get your foot placing right, you change your levels, you drop your height, you get good shoulder connection, you get the wrap around, and you get used to those habits, because by repeating those behaviors, and it can become soft skills, if you want to say, you can, or put it this way, low intensity tackle technique training. This is a great way to work on your skill set. And you can even work on your chop tackles, your low tackles with low intensity, reduced intensity. And the best way to do this is after training. So I'll ask you this, as a rugby player, how many tackles are you practicing a week? 2, 3? Some professional rugby players do 0. And they keep on getting repeated concussions, getting the head on the wrong side. I can tell you there are players at international level that is still getting their head in front of the body and not on the side. And you can work on this. You can work on this after training. You can ask a teammate, join me, jump in. I just want to work on my hits. So guys, tackle technique is something that you can work on with low intensity after training. And to be honest with you, if you want to improve your tackle technique, you should be doing at least 3 times a week, doing extra reps, 5 to 6 minutes. And recently, I just spoke to a good mate of mine, and he does a bit of consulting with professional rugby teams here in France and in the UK. And he mentioned, it's funny enough, there's one particular team, some of the players didn't want to do extras. And he's a professional athlete. At the end of the day, if you look at the mindset of the NFL, if you're not bringing anything to the team, or if you're not making a massive difference to the team, at the end of the day, you can find yourself in a tough position. You can lose your spot in the team. So you got to put in those extra efforts. You got to put in those extra work-ons, those extra skills after training. There's no worse feeling than falling short from performance because you didn't put in the work, because you didn't put in the effort. And coming back, actually, sorry, I'm going to go back to the other point in terms of the whole red brain situation, because there's something which I forgot to mention. When I was coaching at La Rochelle and we had 2 finals against the Toulouse, so emotions wise, because for years, every year, La Rochelle fell short in that final against Toulouse, whether it was a mental barrier, that's something we looked at as a coach, but players got heated. And practically each game in the final that La Rochelle, I'm speaking under correction here, got a red card. I think it was in 2021. I think it was Navani Botia. And there was 1 year as well where Winnie Antonio and Reda Vardy, they got red card, and that killed us as a team. That was tough to come back. We were still in it. So there are a lot of things we can talk about, and that's why it's important to take control of your emotions. All right, so I'm going to come back to the topic I've been waiting for. So obviously, we saw the Springbok scrum was dominant. So this is very important to understand. You don't get to dominant scrum overnight. This comes through hard work. This comes through the right mindset. This comes through the players that are aligned, player investment, player commitment. Everybody's drafting, and I just want to say hats off to Coach Don, doing unbelievable work. I was fortunate enough to have played with him at Toulouse, and we had a few great braais as well, shared a few great stories, and great to see that he's still the same humble man, which I knew back then, which accommodated me in Toulouse. And I was fortunate enough to experience some of the Springbok scrum sessions, and I can tell you this, these guys work hard. They go full on. They don't hold anything back, and they keep it simple. But when you have a dominant scrum like that and you are weaponizing it, that changes the game, because then you are breaking down your opposition physically, mentally, and also emotionally. And I'll be honest with you, I've been on the receiving end of those type of scrums. It doesn't feel great. And I can tell you this, it doesn't happen just like that. You got to put in the effort. You got to put in the work. It's more than just a big hit and everybody working. It's full on commitment. But you got to have that burning desire to want to dominate the scrum. You've got to have it. But where my real lesson is not about how having a dominant scrum. When you're on the receiving end, something like that, and we saw world-class players like Andrew Porter, Dave Furlong, these guys got dominated, right? They were humiliated. I was humiliated in my career on a few times, whether it was Casper Giovanni, Ramiro Herrera, or Rabah Slimani. It's happened to me, so I can't judge them. But now where the lesson comes in for younger players, do you allow a performance like that to start doubting yourself, asking yourself a lot of questions, start to question everything that you have done before, everything that you have done in the past? Or do you actually take a step back and try to understand what actually happened? And that is the key. The Irish team needs to understand what went wrong. It's easy to say, okay, the Springboks are different beasts. They are freaks of nature. These guys are strong. They eat biltong when they are born. And chicken is the most famous vegetable in South Africa. But what I would do, and this is maybe the great lesson for the young props out there, if I was Andrew Porter and Heike van, I would want to have a clear understanding of what is going on. And this is a lot of the things that I'm teaching in my private community, Coach G Level Up. And we are talking about the processes. We talk about how to analyze your scrum, how to identify those work-ons. And it's so important for a rugby player to understand what went wrong. It's easy to say the other team was just stronger, but you got to understand what can you do better, because you might be facing the team against Sue, whether it's in the World Cup final, whether it's in 2 years' time, you might be facing them in the Champions Cup. So you got to understand why you were dominated. So once you understand why you were dominated, then you got to identify your key work-ons. You got to identify, right, what do I need to work on as a player individually to become better? But also, what does my team need to work on collectively to help me? Because at the end of the day, there are lots of variables that you can dissect that scrum of Ireland and potentially point out why they got dominated. For me, South Africa, They had the massive pressure battle, that collective pressure, and it was just too much. Everybody constantly driving with hips. There maybe were one or two scrums that were debatable where you could have potentially penalized the Springboks. But because the Springboks have been giving such a dominant picture, it was difficult to penalize them, if I can put it that way. But something I want to come back on is that the call that Rassie Erasmus made before half time, taking off the props, taking off Thomas du Toit, taking off Bowen Venter. Bowen Venter, by the way, had a great game. He did really well, so respect, well done to that. And a lot of coaches like, why are you doing that? But once again, he's got a clear thing in mind. He's got a clear idea in mind. He knew exactly what he was doing. And, it paid off. Bringing on Wolkelo, bringing on Gert Steenekamp, that was massive. And hats off, because as a coach, that means you're backing your players, you're backing yourself, and it just shows the belief. And the Springboks have really managed to weaponize the scrum. It has become a weapon of mass destruction. Okay? So enough about that. I want to just switch on quickly to the props. So obviously we saw how great it is when a front row is dominate, when a pack is dominating. But props, you got to add more value to the game than just scrummaging. You got to add more value. And the player I want to single out is Thomas du Toit. This is a player that has really come into his own over the last few years, originally starting out at loosehead and now playing tight head. He has really made that position his own. And what he brings to the team is a strong ball carrier. He's got a massive work rate, They don't call him Thomas the Engine for nothing. Thomas the Tank, my apologies. He's got a massive engine on him. But what was key was that jackal that he did, I think it was on the 5-meter line, in a crucial moment where Ireland was. So as a prop, scrummaging is important and you are chasing dominance. But what you got to ask yourself is, what else am I bringing to the table? Where else am I adding value to the team? Because this will help you with selection as well. All right. So there are a lot of things that happened in that game which played a massive role. But when you have players going above and beyond, and the player that I would like to single out is Kobus Reinach. Kobus, I played with him, great guy, and it's great to see he hasn't changed a bit, still the same person. Basically everybody that I've played with or coached with and stuff, they're all the same, still humble. He put loads of pressure on the number 8 of the scrum, but that was due to the pack doing their work. Okay, and it's just great to see him fully invested and fully committed, and he was putting pressure on them, but also on the attack, what he brings. It's like a bottle of fine wine. It's just getting better with age. But I just wanted to highlight that, someone like Kobus Reinach, I think he's 34 years old. I think he's playing some of his best rugby at the moment. The next point I want to talk about is physicality and discipline. This is what wins test matches. And I spoke a bit about it in terms of the blue brain and the red brain mindset. But what was great when the Springboks, when they get in that 22, they were on. So I don't know what was better, seeing that massive destructive scrum of the Springboks in a 22 or Sasha Feinberg Ngumzulu scoring there. Unbelievable. I do believe he's a Dan Carter on steroids. He's starting to come into his own. But that physicality, that discipline, that's key. And that's why there's something that you need to switch on when it's game time. You need to be lucid. You need to be focusing on controlling your aggression. I'm not saying bring your aggression down, but what I'm saying, you need to control it. Okay, there's so many great lessons in this game, and there's a lot of things that we can talk about. And if you look at, we talk as well, using your opportunity. I've spoken about this before. Sometimes you don't get selected, right? You don't always get the opportunities that you deserve. And you have one of two choices to make. You can go sit and sulk. You can feel sorry for yourself. You can blame the coach. You say, I've been there where I blamed the coach and said he got it wrong, instead of just being honest with yourself, like instead of asking why I'm not being selected. But if you consistently work hard and always bring something to the party when you get that opportunity, you can't, how can I say, you won't have any regrets. it's not about proving the coach wrong. It's about proving yourself right. That's the main thing. And the player I want to single out here is Kanan Moody. Unbelievable. He hasn't been playing in a lot of the games. He's been getting game time here and there. And I can imagine this is a player that potentially could have been frustrated in the past, not playing in certain games. But he showed, I think it was the Italy game, he had a great performance. And then you got this opportunity to start on the wing against Ireland. And one could say, okay, Curtly Arnson was injured, but honestly, the impact that he had is just unbelievable. And also another youngster coming from my valley, from the board out there, Paul, Stellenbosch, Wellington. So that was just unbelievable to see. So yeah, guys, that's me. That's what I wanted to share with you guys today. That's my take on the game. It's not so much in terms of the analysis of what happened. It's about the key lessons. We see the importance of a great defense, what that brings to a team, trusting and backing that defensive system. We see the importance of the set piece, having a dominant scrum, what impact that has. But also the lesson there for me is, what do you do when you get dominated? What is your process? What are you going to do to rectify, to get back in the fight? You can't let anger fuel you. You can't let embarrassment fuel you. So those are the main things. And then I think the one thing as well, which I touched base on, I spoke about tackle technique. If you want to harness certain skills, if you want to focus on your skill acquisition as a rugby player, you got to put in the work. You got to put in the graft. Okay. All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And if you enjoyed these type of discussions, please, I would advise you to join my private community called Coach G Level Up. It's on the school platform. This is a great space to connect with other like-minded people and coaches, where we are talking on topics like rugby, scrum, resilience, mindset, everything. We are sharing our wins. We are sharing our losses. We're encouraging each other. We get on a weekly community call, and where we just speak on topics that resonate with us. And if you want to join this community, it's very simple. Just check the link in the description below in this podcast episode, whether it's on Spotify, on YouTube, or Apple Podcast. And even simpler, if you want to get the link to the community, just DM me the words community on Instagram, and I will send you the link. And I just want to say thank you once again for everybody that has supported us on the Lessons from the Game podcast, which has now evolved and transformed into the Coach G Show. I'm super excited about this journey and what's coming next. At the moment, we are currently working on a lot of new guests coming on, working behind the scenes. So potentially there might be next week, we might not be releasing an episode with the guest, but I've already got something planned for next week, which I'll be sharing as a slightly longer form episode with you guys. But I really do appreciate your support. And I would love, if you're enjoying these podcast episodes, please subscribe to the show. A lot of you that are listening or watching this on YouTube or Spotify are not subscribed. Please subscribe and share it with your friends. But anyway, guys, that is me. I would like to wish everybody an unbelievable weekend. There's one more game to go, South Africa against Wales. I'm really looking forward to sharing some of the lessons from that game. And let me know what is the take and the feedback you have from these type of podcasts. I'm still trying out different things to share with you guys, because I want to offer you guys something different. I want to offer you something more insightful. There's some great podcasts out there as well. I must say, hats off to someone like Egg Chaser, that YouTube channel. The debrief he gives after games is really great. So well done, brother. I really respect what you're doing and the work and the effort that you've put in. All right, guys, that's me. I hope you guys have an unbelievable day and weekend, and I will see you guys on the next episode. Have a good day. Ciao, ciao. Bye.